change your mind, change your habits, change your life.
And this idea of how you operate at a high frequency with these high vibrational emotions. Watch what you say,
Completely.
because your words carry an energy.
If you don't know rage, you cannot know passion.
And you have to suffer. So like the whole point of coming here on earth, as in our souls only knew those high vibrational states. And how do you truly experience joy or love if you haven't experienced the flip side of that? Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Unplugged with Taylor, where we discuss 5D concepts that help you thrive in a 3D world. We are here today with Wendy Sue Wahl, owner of Within Integral Healing. Wendy is an Akashic Records teacher and consultant, and also a Reiki master teacher. Welcome, Wendy.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Taylor.
Well, I would like us to start off. You channeled a very beautiful message for the audience today before we got started. So if you would like to start by sharing that.
Yes, thank you. I opened the records of the podcast here today so that I would be bringing information through from the Akashic Records, whom I call the masters, teachers, and loved ones. And so the message that they gave me today for this podcast was how do we find a place where we can agree to disagree? And how can we be in the moral value of ourselves? By morality, what they mean is what is right for us. Where do we find our resonance within ourselves? So they were asking us to consider, as Taylor and I were talking over the course of the next hour, where do you feel yourself feeling what is true for you? And where do you feel yourself being pulled out into things that may not be yours to be pulled into? And so we'll be addressing that as we go further along. And that agree to disagree, knowing that love and the things that we find personally valuable for us are actually more important than some of the other things that are happening in this 3D reality.
Yes, I loved what you said out there about our 5D values being different than what we're feeling here in the 3D reality.
Thank
it's
you.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, so let's jump in. I want to hear, starting with your story. Like, how did this start for you?
Our early childhood experiences often can point us in a direction, and there was a lot of violence and sexual abuse and non-care growing up. So my tracking ability became very, very strong, but it wasn't just tracking. It was a hypervigilance with a warrior type energy behind it, which meant pretty much stay away from me and get off of me and leave me alone. So as I grew and as I started becoming more spiritual and started finding different churches to go to or had different life experiences, knowing that some things were just too synchronistic to explain outside of, for me, a higher presence. I just started relaxing. And then I found somebody that taught Reiki, and she also is with Akashic Record Consultants International, which is my lineage. And so over the course of the last 20 years, I've been teaching and doing consults, and every single day working more and more towards becoming the self that I know that I am at the soul level, rather than the one that was created through this lifetime in the parents and the family that I grew up in.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I have, it really does play out, like where we're born and the time that we're born. And I have a friend that was born in Detroit during the riots, and there's a hypervigilance in him consistently about the welfare of everyone around him, which is lovely if you're his friend. But I was the same way. I felt like I had to take care of people a lot, and it was an overextension that was absolutely not necessary nor asked for.
So, and I would love to talk about how you learned over time to protect your energy, because, that hypervigilance makes you take in things that aren't yours and things that you don't want to take in.
Yes. You say the word protect your energy. And so I have my own version of that. And I'm also asking the records, which is where the pause is coming in. For me personally, I really like spending time alone. I set up times between my clients or between the things that I'm doing outside the house to like rest, read a book, walk my dog. And I think that all of that is really important for us to have, for every individual to have a place that they can just relax into and find their humor in. And by that, I mean that we're all pretty funny, right? We have to be able to laugh at ourselves. So when we find ourselves taking ourselves too serious, I think that is not protecting your energy. If you can laugh at the things that you're actually doing, that is part of protecting your energy because you realize you're human and then the brain gets quiet and then you can just be easier on yourself.
Yes.
And that's a type of protection.
Absolutely. That has been a journey for me, for sure.
There's also ways that you can do it simple. Like you can actually just take this gateway to God here and come up over your head and all the way down your body and just say, I am done with that now.
I'm done with that now.
Yep. And it just goes all the way down to your feet and do it 3 times. Take a breath, assessing like where you are now. And if there feels like there's any residue, do it again. And that's something you can do anywhere, anytime that you want to do it. And then water, eating, chocolate. So
I am reading this book. It's called Trust Your Vibes by Sonia Croquette.
Yeah.
And it's been, and you and I were just chatting about this. It's been so interesting to me how practical and like common sense almost the foundational pieces of tuning into your vibes are. And I say tuning into your vibes is basically like, and I can use myself as an example, always lived in my head for many years. So when someone says like, oh, well, you got to get in, speak from your heart or get into your body. I'm like, what does that mean? What does that even mean?
Well, and honestly, we think our heart's right here. And so we're like trying to get into our heart. There's an aligned energy that moves from our feet straight up through the center of our body that comes out as a pillar of light, right? And so sometimes what we're aligning to may be over here on our shoulder because it might be that tap on the shoulder that's like, hey, honey, remember last time you did that? Do you really want to do that again? Right? So it isn't always in the same place that you're tapping into your vibes. But if you know where your alignment is, and what it feels like to be solid, like in the yoga pose mountain, right? Both feet, shoulders back, the breath. And then where is your weight at? Where's your fulcrum point? And so when you're leaning into or leaning away from, how does it feel to you? Is it a yes or is it a no? Is it an I don't know? And in our culture, a lot of times we're not taught I don't know. Like my dad, if he said I don't know, well, that was just totally unacceptable, right? So knowing your yes and knowing your no is really important.
So when you hear somebody to say, and, I thought it was interesting when I had a consulting session with you, we were talking about something and you told me, you said, oh, you're out of your heart, you're back in your head. And you could hear that from the way my voice sped up and I started speaking fast. And so you could hear the difference of me speaking from the heart when it was more slow and...
Yes, from the heart and then also from the belly. So if you, the brain moves very, very quickly. So there's a way that your tone usually will drop if you're talking from your belly and you will slow down. And if you're really talking down from your root, then there's a different resonance that comes all the way up and from here. And then from there, that's where you can feel your yes and your no. So if somebody asks me a question, do you want to do this? If I'm coming from here, then I start going to, well, yeah, my dad always said I should do this. My mom always said that. The church says I should do this. My friends will be really mad at me. You know what's going to happen if I don't do that? Or if I'm going to ruin my new shoes because it's raining. And so then all this starts happening. But if I go here and it's like, do I really want to go? And it's like, yeah. So then none of the other stuff matters. Or heck no, none of the other stuff matters.
Someone taught me, and it's been a really helpful like baseline to establish as someone who wasn't used to tuning into their body at all, to say, kind of like put my hand on my heart and say, my name is Taylor, and then kind of feel that. To me, it feels like it shows up as a flutter in my chest is my yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then to check it and say, my name is Caitlin. And then the difference.
You can really feel it. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Say that one more time.
My name is Taylor. Flutter. My name is Caitlin. Nothing.
Right.
So that's how you figure out what a yes feels like in your body. And I'm here today, as a student representing all the other people out there that are like me and were, for so many years living in their head and didn't even know what it meant to be tuning into the body.
It's also important to recognize that in a lot of times in society, it's not safe to be in your body. And it doesn't really matter if you're male or female, right? We've got all of these places in our life where we've been told that we're wrong, or we've been told that we couldn't trust our instincts, or we've been told through example or through words or through shunning or bullying or whatever that we don't matter. And so it really is difficult sometimes for our ego to drop its defenses and let us just relax into those places that we've kind of abandoned. And that's one of the places that the records are really good at, Reiki is really excels at, is getting into those spaces and shining light in the places where we've hidden our secrets in our body.
Where we've tuned out from like the pain or the discomfort that is our body trying to tell us it needs attention.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, the thing about that is it's not so easy at first because your brain, your body, everything is functioning to do what it thinks is best for you. And it doesn't think that feeling pain that's been repressed is best for you. So, accessing that takes patience and faith.
And the only way through it is through it. And unfortunately, the more we stuff it or the more we ignore it, the more we turn our back on it, the louder it gets and the louder it gets and the louder it gets, because there's going to be crossroads in our life that if our soul says now is the time, we're not going to be able to get away from it.
Yes.
And it's not even about like, so the records are like just started talking. So it's not even about finding your purpose. It's not even about how you're going to make money in the world. It's about having peace inside of yourself. It's about being able to like appreciate all the beauty around you. Know that what we're living in is not all there is. And that is a part of the 3D reality. It's like, oh, there's that and there's that and there's that and there's that. But there's also that thing that tells you, like yesterday I went to Costco and I was told to get pecans, and I took them to my friend and she goes, you know what? I woke up this morning knowing I had to go to Costco and get pecans. I had no idea. But for some reason, I was just told to do it. So it's not even about these big epiphany ahas about seeing, rainbows in the sky that nobody else can see, or the unicorn that's hiding under your bed, or, those things that we keep secret because we think people think we're crazy. But what if, like, every single day we just allowed ourselves to congratulate ourselves on the things that we did listen to, and then actually said, tomorrow, maybe I'll try and listen a little bit harder, but today I did so well.
Everything you just said, because it's the trust and the faith piece. And in the book, there are so many beautiful stories, like you described, of people being like, oh, you want me to do what? Oh, I'm getting this urge to like turn this way, even though my job is this way. Why am I feeling such a nudge to go this opposite way? And then she tells a story about a lady who saved a toddler who'd ran out in the street. I mean, a man who was on his way running late for work for a meeting and felt this nudge to go back home and listen to it. And there was an issue with his dishwasher was going to catch his house on fire. So it's like, how do you tune into those nudges and listen to those amongst all the noise that's going on in your head? And, that was just...
that actually brings tears to my eyes because it makes me personally sad, and it makes the record sad how much society has influenced our personal beliefs in ourselves, or our self-care, or our self. they're using the word righteousness, but not in that I am right and I have it all. It's just that in myself, I do have the right to feel the strength of my knowing. And in a way, that is self, capital S, righteousness. It's like, no, Taylor, that doesn't work for me. Or yes, that does work for me. And so the more that you can get to know what is true in your vibration and your resonance, right? So for example, if you go in and you steal a loaf of bread, we would think that that's not good, right? But if you stole a loaf of bread and you had money in your pocket, crime. If you had stole a loaf of bread and you had 5 kids at home and you had no money and they were starving, is that different?
Mm-hmm.
Is one in integrity and one's out of integrity? Same exact action. So the more that we can start actually allowing ourselves to feel like, oh, I did that so well. I personally would really like to do that better. Or, you know what? I'm just not even going to do that again because it didn't feel good to me. So I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, when you wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, I wish I would have said that. I wish I would have said that. I wish I would have said that. That really is our brain in super mode, like giving all that energy back to that person that gave to us. But it's also your inside saying, you know, that didn't feel good to you. So next time, what would you like to do with that differently so that you're actually having those 5D values come into the reality and you're preparing for it, because preparation is a part of that.
That can be so difficult, speaking for myself, and I'm sure a lot of people sometimes. And I want to ask, have you found in people that you've worked with, and then even thinking back on your own personal journey, how you start to build that? And like you said, in the society we live in, this can be challenging for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but trauma can cause a lot of distrust in self. So learning to trust your vibes and listen and tune into yourself and your body after experiencing a lot of trauma.
The biggest part about not trusting ourselves, and this has to do with trauma, is that we actually don't want to receive any reflection. Once we've been traumatized, so if you're a little girl that's been sexually abused, you don't want to attract any attention to yourself later on as you grow up, right? Or you're promiscuous because you think that that is love. And there's other options there. But you have to really, they don't want to say have to. There's a way of looking at the trauma almost from a neutral observer and then letting you get some reflections, right? You're looking me right in the eye right now. So I could consider that a threat if I was still actively in my trauma and want to look away. But then when I look away, that doesn't let me see that you're understanding me or that you're connecting with me. So it's important to know when you're turning away to not receive or when you're turning away to keep yourself protected. Does that make sense?
The awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness of self,
Mm-hmm.
and tuning in to one thing that helped me, I think, was reading about intuition versus trauma. Or, intuition's never going to try to scare you, and it's not going to be fear-based messaging. So that actually helped me a lot with just starting that, trying to discern, like, well, is this my conditioning? Is this my, trauma talking, or is this intuition?
And intuition oftentimes won't repeat itself over and over and over and over and over and over again, like our trauma does, like our brain as it hits our adrenals and our amygdala. And,
Oh, that makes sense, because it's trying to keep, it's like, nope, not safe, not safe.
Not exactly. Whereas the intuition's like, hey, do you want to look at this? Hey, what about this? Hey, right? So it's more of an offering versus the trauma, which is a real repetitive force.
And intuition's going to allow you to remain calm and grounded, even in the event that there is some sort of threat, and it's just going to be a more calm and grounded message for you.
I don't. Let me ask the records about this, because honestly, there's so much physiological stuff that happens. In the old days, we needed to know that dinosaurs were bigger than us. If you're out on safari, you're not going to get out of the Jeep if a lion's coming. So there's a physiological thing that goes, lion, run, right? And so your adrenals are going to get involved in all of that. So I don't know how to answer the question. is intuition a calmer message? It's a different feeling than the tracking of the brain, but there's an urgency sometimes with intuition too. And so I don't know if you're talking about the urgency or...
And that would, the
sense?
urgency would still feel different than that fear-based conditioning, would you say?
I'm listening. They're not trying to... This is what I'm hearing. I have been, they want to give a personal example.
Okay.
Walking down a dark street before, felt perfectly calm, all by myself, in a big city, no big deal. My intuition is saying, this is okay. It feels okay. I'm relaxed. I don't see or hear anything. I'm not on edge. And then I've been walking down the same street a little bit later, 2 weeks later or whatever, and I get this flash, and it's totally intuition. It's not fear, like, you are not safe here right now. The voice is very clear. Please walk faster and move. So it was calmer, but it still had an urgency to it, just not the repetitive part.
That's interesting because that makes me think. So I would consider myself on my journey to, work through some things that have caused me to have hypervigilance. And I am constantly just like, to me, out walking on the street. So there's no one else around. I'm on the other street, like, sorry, not trying to offend anybody, but that's just very hypervigilant all the time. And there was, a few months ago, I was reading at a park, I was actually journaling, and I had found this great spot on this tree by the water, and there was, it was in the wooded area, so it wasn't out in a clearing, and there was a man playing fetch with his dog in the water, and I was watching, I was like, oh, isn't that nice? And, nothing threatening about it or whatever. But then when he walked out and he was walking towards me, and he was about to be crossing right in front of the only opening in the clearing and me, and it was like, get up, pick up your bag, walk out. And it wasn't like this, like, panicky, but it was just like, no, get up right now.
So the feeling came from all the way through you, right?
Exactly.
So that's different than just like,
So that when you said that, when you shared that example, it made me think of that story. That was different than other times when I'm just kind of constantly, hypervigilant, scanning, assuming the worst. Wow.
And our brain is bent to assume the worst. Our brain is actually bent to find the flaw or to find what might not work in a system. That's the way we work in our brain. So there is a huge awareness in the healing of trauma, and a huge awareness in the healing and the movement forward into trusting your intuition and into even just existing more in the 5D, is to understand that our brain is not wrong. Sometimes it needs to be busy, and we're not giving it anything to do. So it doesn't, that task over there, do a puzzle. Like, let your brain have something to do to fit the pieces together. What we're taught that our brain, here's what they want to do. Let's back up. If you know how the brain physiologically works, you know that it has to have a job. It doesn't go to rest very often unless you're being physically active. So having a balanced life, where if you're just going to sit and be peaceful, like read a book or meditate, because then that brings your energy back down, right? Or put a puzzle together, or watching TV actually is a distraction oftentimes, and your brain is just running in the background. Oh, look at that, and look at that color. I hate that dress, or why would they eat that? Or, oh man, so-and-so was just really mean to that person. And then we go out and we start witnessing all of that meanness in our lives or in the day-to-day, or we start noticing it. So oftentimes we can re-traumatize ourselves by watching certain things that remind us of certain things. And then our brain becomes hyper-vigilant and aware of it. And then it becomes even more hyper-vigilant and aware of it. And so we're actually just creating this place where our brain will not rest.
Do you think, in a sense, that people feed their anxiety that way?
Yes.
I think about all the episodes of Law and Order that I watched and Criminal Minds and every serial killer documentary possible. And I'm like, what on earth? To be the scariest, biggest scaredy cat. Why was I watching all those things?
You know, is that a direct question? Because I can tell you.
No, I've kind of I don't anymore. And I've kind of figured out, that it was me feeding my own anxiety. Is that accurate?
I don't know. Well, the records are saying that it wasn't you feeding your own anxiety, but it is important to know in a safety factor, yes, like what's possible in the world. And then we're fascinated with things that happen to other people. And we're fascinated with darkness.
Yeah.
We're just fascinated with darkness. And it's unfortunate because sometimes those experiences then take away our innocence and we forget to laugh or appreciate the flowers, right? There's no harm, no foul, no shame in anything that we do, as long as we're consenting and it's not just habitual, as long as the other person's consenting and it's not being taken advantage of. And so if you know that you're going to sit and watch Law and Order, just be present with the fact that you're going to watch it rather than, oh my gosh.
Non-attachment, right?
Yep. Choice. Go ahead.
Why do you think that is, that we're so fascinated with darkness?
When I was taking my havening classes, which havening is an amazing modality for helping move the brain out. It's a matter of stroking the arms like this, allowing the amygdala to relax from shoulder to your elbow, just taking a breath, and you can decide how much pressure you want to put on it. Find your own pace, feel the warmth of your skin.
I like
what
that.
does it feel like underneath your palms, right? And you can do your face, you can do your legs like this. If you do that for 5 minutes, your brain will calm, your body will calm. It is just like you pat a little kitten or a puppy or a baby. But one of the things that they teach is there's certain things that all humans are afraid of. And one of the things that we're afraid of is what we can't see, what we don't know. And so if we watch these shows, it's like, oh, and that's possible, and that's possible, and that's possible. So there's really less. In some ways, we feel like it's an education, the records are saying. But then what happens is it grabs us and turns it into fear.
It's like an illusion of control in a sort.
Yeah, it's an illusion of self-care in a way, and then it flips into fear.
Interesting. Whew.
We are so complex.
Yeah, the brain
loving.
is so
I
complex
know.
too.
I know.
So working with all parts, mind, body, spirit, and
emotion.
Yes, and getting it all to function together is a journey.
And it's interesting how fear and excitement can feel like the exact same thing, right? Oh, what's going to happen next? Or wow, what's going to happen next?
Yes, I had a therapist that told me that you can learn to rebrand it in a sense. She said 2 kids going on a roller coaster. One of them they're both feeling the same energy. Mm-hmm. One of them is it's excitement about the experience, and the other one is more the fear. But those things can the anxiousness, but those energies can feel the same. It's maybe how you process it.
Well, and there's another tool that the records have given me, which is so if I'm labeling it, I'm just labeling it fear. But if I ask, so what I'm afraid of, and I get one answer, like maybe I'm afraid that my hair is going to be messier. I'm not going to be able to talk clearly on this. Well, where does that stem from? And is there a way that I can soothe that? And so it's like, oh, I'm actually really embarrassed, not afraid.
What's
because in
beneath
third
it?
grade, because in third grade, my mom gave me a perm the day of class. Like, why would you do that to your child?
My mom gave me a perm in the 3rd grade.
Come on, moms, no 3rd grade perms, please. It's traumatizing.
It was.
Even at 65, it's traumatizing.
I'm going to put the photo up of it. It's real humbling.
Right? Yeah. So I'm worried about my hair all the way over here. Out there, I said, look, I got to go fix my hair. And all I did was comb it. But it comes from that third grade experience.
My fear if I'm one of the little girls getting on the roller coaster, it's I'm going to die on the roller coaster. Like, I won't get on a roller coaster right now. And I don't know. Haven't had like a traumatic roller coaster experience. I think it's just maybe my own hypervigilance of like, that feels the cost risk factor for that. Just not a good time to me.
But see, that's your no.
Mm-hmm.
And there doesn't have to be a reason for your no. And you don't ever have to explain your no. This feels like a no to me.
Yeah.
And just holding it all the way down, you just found your no.
Yeah.
And I don't have to tell you why it's a no. It's like,
And that, that can be hard, even as adults. I mean, just because as humans, we're social beings and we want to be accepted. And when we're not comfortable with something that other people are, it's easy to be like, oh, what's wrong with me that I can't like enjoy this thing that other people enjoy?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of that. Like, and as someone from the education system, I say this often, like, from a young age, we're not taught to follow what we feel and believe and what's right for us. It's very much listen to others.
And also, and there's reasons for that, right? But the other thing is that if we listen to ourselves from a young age, would we really learn all the lessons that we're learning at the soul level as we grow, as we move towards the evolution of who we are, because every soul comes in with something to learn. The earth is a learning laboratory. And so we come in to experience things.
It's almost like it's a journey back to yourself. It's like, can you find your way back? In spite of everything that's happened and everything you've been taught.
And then it becomes this double-edged sword because I keep moving the goalpost and never is enough. And there's always more work to do. And then I'm this huge project that never gets anything done because all of my energy is coming into what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with me, what can I heal next, what can I heal next, what can I heal next, what can I heal next? Rather than, wow, that was a big one. Can I just take a vacation here and let that integrate?
So that was really a big theme that came up for me in the last plant medicine ceremony that I was a part of. It was in the beginning, it was like, oh, your like inner child, the parts of you, they're so tired. Like I was just laying there on the ground and it was like, look how tired they are. You are putting them through so much work. You are so determined to like fix everything, heal everything, going to be better. Almost like taking the things I was doing before and just applying them to my healing journey. And it was just like, look how tired you are. And it was just a really
Did you have
beautiful
tears
moment.
When you actually heard that?
There were a lot of tears.
Right?
Yeah.
So feel those tears in your heart, like you were just telling us from your brain. And now when you let it drop down and those children can feel that, the audience can feel that, that's part of the rest. It's like, wow, this really happened to me. And I'm acknowledging it. I was so glad when Spirit told me that I could rest. And I felt rest.
Something that you said to me when I had my session with you came up in it as well, that I'll share. You said to me, and it was so beautiful because, when you talk about things, you try to explain someone your story. I had very few times have I ever felt so seen, as I did. And we're on the phone, and I just felt so seen. And you said you really need to learn to create or work on creating safety within your body because you have not felt that ever since utero. And I kept thinking to myself, well, how do you create a feeling that you've never even experienced? And so several times throughout that specific journey, it was like, you're doing it. You're creating the safety. This is the safety. You're creating it. And it was really beautiful. And I'm so thankful that we had that beautiful conversation because I really carried that work with me. Into that experience.
And it's interesting because you said, how do I create that? Once you have the intention and you have the awareness, the whole world conspires, the whole universe conspires with you, not against you. So it's like, oh, that rang so true for me. That resonated so deeply with me. Okay, I want to create a sense of safety. Okay, world. Okay, friends.
Speaking it
Okay,
into
self.
existence.
Yes. Yes.
That's what, and you talk about this a little bit on your website, and I would love to talk about this concept of co-creation, because there has become a very it's a huge trend right now. It's like, this is how you manifest. No, this is how you manifest. This, have everything you want in days, manifest. And so it's been really cool for me reading in the book about watch what you say,
Completely.
because your words carry an energy. I actually conducted a little science experiment off something I saw, where you write a word on a piece of paper, and you put it in like a little thing of water, and you put it in the freezer, and you watch it, how the water freezes based on the energy of the word. So like a word like anger, that word, we have given that word a meaning, and therefore
Yes.
that word carries an energy.
Yes.
And so the way that the water would freeze versus a word like love, it's crazy. If everyone should try that at home, because you will be amazed to look at the differences. But it makes sense. Everything is energy.
Mm-hmm.
We assign energy to words in the way that we use
Mm-hmm.
them. And I grew up around a lot of profanity, and I've never really thought twice about using it. And in the book, it was even like, watch your intention behind word, because those words carry energy. And it was saying, she gave an example about being in elementary school, or middle school, not elementary school, middle school. And she didn't want to go on a date with this boy. Maybe she was in high school, actually, now that I think about it. But she didn't want to go on a date with this boy, and she didn't want to tell him. So she tells him on the phone, she makes up a story that she has to babysit. And on the phone, she says, oh, I really wish I could see you tonight. And then she gets off the phone with him, goes ice skating with her friends, and then she bumps straight into him. And she's like, well, I did say.
Exactly. And that's not even just what we're saying. What are we putting out with our body? What are we putting out with our energy? Right? What are we really doing when we're not present, or we're walking too fast, or we haven't given ourselves enough time? Or earlier when you said, I got that information that I'm really tired, when you let that sink in and we could feel the truth of that, even though there were tears, we can have more compassion than that hypervigilance or that anger that keeps someone away, even though it's the same emotion. I'm so sad, I'm so tired, stay away, versus I'm so sad, I'm so tired. Okay, can you have some compassion for me? Right? So it really is not just words that we give that energy to. And if we're not telling somebody how we feel, they're going to make it up, because they're going to pick that energy and they're going to put their own label on it, and they're going to go through their dictionary and say, and they're this and this and this and this. And then you're going to have a whole nother story that you have to deal with, because somebody is telling you who you are and how you are and what you feel, when that's not correct at all. So bravery is important. Bravery is important. Bravery is important.
How do you I want to talk a little bit about the concept. I want to go back to that and talk a little bit more about the concept of co-creating with the universe. Okay. Because I could be in a state of my life where I'm bitter about, I'm not really feeling a lot of gratitude. I'm focused on what I don't have. I'm focused on the lack. I'm skeptical. I'm angry. I'm complaining. I'm comparing. But then out loud, I'm saying, I want this, I want that, I really do want this. It's the energy that's going to throw that off, right?
Yeah, because it's counterintuitive. You're saying something, but you're not feeling something. And that is where some of the manifestation ideas or ideals have gone wrong, because there isn't a dropping into the body. So your whole resonance and vibration is speaking with you. The one accord, the alignment is important. It's important.
So let me ask you this, because I'm really gotten into frequencies, and this idea of how you operate at a high frequency with these high vibrational emotions, and then what are low vibrational emotions. In fact, I've told my whole family about it. My little sister texted me the other day. I sent her a video of my dog, and she said, Coco has a high frequency today. So they're always picking at me. But it makes sense. Where is the balance between wanting to operate at a high frequency and live in that, but also acknowledging
What do you consider low frequency emotions?
Anger, resentment, fear, bitterness.
Okay, there is that scale
Uh-huh.
that's out there, 100, 200, 300. When you feel angry, do you ever feel like you have a right to be angry?
Yeah.
So not all anger is a low vibrational. Anger can really be used as a motivator. It can really be used to remedy and heal situations. What if your mom didn't pay any attention to you your whole growing up, and then just God forbid, you're raped at 16, and then your mom gets pissed off and goes straight into gear and goes to the school and goes to the boys' parents and does whatever it needs to be do. That anger is going to actually be loving to you.
Mm.
So all emotions are valid. How they're being expressed, whether they're coming from a healed place or an unhealed place, is another part of it. But all emotions are valid. If you don't know rage, you cannot know passion.
Duality. That's been such a... I had a really interesting conversation that I would love to hear your thoughts on with a friend recently. He said, I told him, I said, all suffering is mental. And he was like, well, you have suffering is inevitable and you have to suffer. So like the whole point of coming here on earth, as in our souls only knew those high vibrational states. And how do you truly experience joy or love if you haven't experienced the flip side of that? Like, that's why it's love, because you felt the opposite, or that's why it's joy, because you felt the opposite. So the point of being here as humans is to feel the whole, gambit of emotions, and to have, I guess, use the word struggles, but it's still struggling. It is mental. It's what you've assigned to it, right?
I'm asking the records because I have one opinion on that. And there's religions that feel like a suffering is a part of life. What's your definition of suffer? Let's just start with the basics so we know we're talking about the same thing.
So I think it is attachment to the emotion and the story. I would say the story is which is why it's mental.
Which would be mental.
Because it's the story.
Yes. In that case, yes.
What are so like in writing a new story, is there a point where that becomes avoiding?
Well, the records are saying yes. I mean, anything can be a point, but so fantasy has a definite place. Sometimes our life isn't good and we want to be Cinderella and we want to go to the ball and we want the pumpkin to turn into the carriage and we want the mouse to be our horseman or whatever. The thing is that it really isn't about writing a new story. It's about uncovering where the old story lies. We are whole. We are whole. Already, we're whole. We have layers of things that have been put on top of us. We've put on top of us. We have these experiences. When you were in other places in your lineage, in the soul lineage, whether you had a body or didn't have a body, things were put on you. We have our ancestors. There's certain types of, you had your dad and you had your mom and then you had your grandparents and then you had your great grandparents and you had the country that you were born in and you had all the culture and the precepts and the miasms of that culture, and you come back down and they're like living right here in your little body in these little tiny cells. So when you're transmuting something like that, it's good to have a whole array of tools. But it's much about becoming or uncovering and becoming aware of what you're uncovering and then deciding what you want and what you don't want. It's not about denying this, getting a new pen and writing in bigger letters so that it makes more sense.
That was so beautifully put. Your writing a new story can be a tool, but the point is, where did the old story come from? That's that shadow that you're bringing to the forefront.
Exactly. Because if you're not going to let it in, set it down, give it some tea.
It's gonna hang out back there.
And it's going to come back again.
Bigger.
Because it loves you.
That was so game-changing for me. It's like the harder that you try to shame and not like a part of yourself and push away, the harder it's going to hold on.
Yeah. And the ego isn't bad. We need it to move around on this plane. And honestly, what do you think an actor or an actress does? They're pulling up all those pieces and parts of who they are and their own personal experiences. So there's a place for these experiences to be recognized and utilized in our life. If someone thinks you're batshit crazy, excuse my language, sometimes that might benefit you.
That's what all artists do.
I don't know where those words came from.
That's what all artists do is right. They transmute feeling and emotion. They're able to access all of that and then transmute it into something beautiful and unique.
And relatable.
Yeah. Sometimes it's that access that isn't the easiest.
Yeah, acceptable or alignment, acceptance, access. I mean, they all start with the letter A. There's a beginning point of doing this work, right?
Yeah.
And we need to be kind. Kindness is of the utmost importance when we're working with ourselves and with our trauma and with our experiences and with our desires and the shift and change that we're trying to co-create.
That inner, because manifestation takes the inner work. You can't do that without the inner work.
Not normally.
Yeah.
Not normally.
Yeah, it's hard to package that up and sell it in a bundle because it's difficult work.
And the other thing, it is. And it can be fun. But the other thing is that we forget. So you go and you have this amazing experience, right? And then it's like, oh, I'm going to be changed forever. I just went to Africa and I was there for 2 weeks. It was lovely. I went on safari. I felt so different when I came back. I felt so different. And now I don't feel as different. And I find my mind saying, oh, you had that experience and you didn't integrate it. Oh, you had that experience and it didn't make any difference. Or, oh, you had this experience and you're still behaving that way. But the truth is, I am different. It's just integrated and it's become my new normal. And so I have to at times go back to say, okay, this is the Wendy Sue before Africa. This is the Wendy Sue after Africa. So that I remember, or I go back and read my journal. It's like, oh yeah, I was really feeling angst about that. Wow, I haven't felt angst about that for the last 3 months. That's awesome. So review who you were and what you've done and who you are now to really see what the truth is of how you've changed, how you've grown.
Something that really clicked for me recently was our body is and our soul and our mind, our spirit, it's all naturally, it's always healing.
It's always
healing. So, in my head, it's this, if I'm not taking 2 hours to write down every feeling and then figure out where it came from. And, I went through this phase where I'm like, oh, I'm not working enough. It's the natural things like exercise, movement, slowing down, listening, the food you eat. Mm-hmm. You're just supporting its natural process.
Yes.
And I have recently had these intense dreams. I mean, just every night, these really intense, vivid dreams. And it kind of clicked. I was like, oh, I'm processing.
Exactly.
I don't have to sit and write down. I was waking up with a pen by my bed, writing the dream down, looking up the dream. I was like, okay, now how do I figure out the dream and then fix what it's trying to tell me? And then I was like,
I'm working too hard.
I'm just not, the dream itself is my body processing something and releasing it.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you. I would love to chat just a little bit more about the Akashic records.
Okay.
And what does that feel like for you when that comes through?
Well, there's 4 ways. There's 4 ways, 5 ways, 6 ways, 7 ways, a plethora of ways to receive information. But there's 4 main ways. So claircognizant is clear knowing. Clairaudient is that you're a clear hearer. Clairsentient is clear feeling. And then clairvoyant is the clear seeing. For me personally, It's just a claircognizant. I don't actually know what's going to happen when I open my mouth, which took some trust, but that is how it works with me. As most people have one main clair, that's how they receive most things. However, as you do more of your work and as you become a clearer, the other ones will come in, right? Let me reword that. Most people have one main clair. However, as you do more clearing, unlayering, untethering, and all of that, then you'll start to trust that you also see things, that you also hear things, that you also know things, that you also feel things. So for me, it's the claircognizance.
The trust piece is interesting because you can, I was reading, you can start with like take note of the little times when those nudges or that intuition came through for you and was right. And that's how you kind of build like that inventory.
Yes, take the notes or the noticings, but in the records, when I'm teaching a class, oftentimes the records will tell you something that you already know. And then there's that question, is this you or is this me? Or is this something I already know? Or can I ask this question differently? Or can I ask for more information so that something that I don't know is also being given to me along with something that I do know? Because we know a lot. We know a lot about other people. We know a lot about our personal lives. We know a lot about life in general. So to discount what it is that we do know from a higher perspective is different, is more damaging than if you're discounting something that you know from your brain. Did that make sense?
Yes. What did that look like for you, figuring out, okay, is this something that I know because of my sixth sense? Or is this something I just already know? Like, how did that trust?
Well, I'm the oldest. And like I stated, there was a lot of violence and other things in our house. So my hypervigilance made me a knower. But how my knowing came out was like control. Like, I know what's best for you. Get over here. Do what I want you to do because otherwise, right? So it became this cycle that wasn't kind for anybody. It wasn't kind for me, and it wasn't kind certainly for my friends or my brothers and sisters, or because I just like knew everything. So when it comes from spirit, and it has that softer fact to it when you're stating, like, look, this is what I'm seeing. Do you want to know this or not? It becomes a question that you're asking somebody rather than the demand of, this is what I feel like you should do. And so for me, the knowing of myself also took on the same tone. When it was coming from spirit, it just felt softer. It's like, hey, Wendy Sue, have you ever thought about this? Rather than, Wendy, you must do this now. It doesn't mean there wasn't an element of truth in the knowing that had that force and pressure to it. But mostly it was just, I was so unkind to myself that it just had unkindness, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
In how many years have you been consulting?
20.
Wow.
I've been teaching for about 17 and consulting for 20.
Do you feel like when you have a session with someone that afterwards it's kind of like you were channeling, maybe is the proper word? So it's not like you're holding everybody's information in your memory.
The sacred prayer method that I use for Akashic Record Consultants International, we say a sacred prayer out loud. There's a period of silence. Most of the people that are with me, whether on the phone, Zoom, or although I don't do a lot of Zoom, or sitting in my living room, will also feel that the records have now opened. There's a pressure change or a sound change or just a relaxation that happens. And then through the questions of the person, we ask the Akashic records, the masters, teachers, and loved ones. And then I just give them what I hear. And my intention is that everything I say come from the records. And the Akashic records know everything that's ever happened to you. They know the history of the world. They know about this podcast here. They know that you have your own energy in file. I have my own energy in file, but us being here together has its own energy in file. So there's an amazing amount of energy in the Akasha that can be accessed as information through taking an Akashic record class or getting an Akashic record consult.
And which I've signed up to do with you, and I'm so excited. I can't wait. So one thing I would like to touch on is like, it's so interesting how the messages are for your highest good. So, like in my reading with you, I believe personally in reincarnation. So I'm like, oh, what were my past lives? And they were like, they don't think you need to know that right now. You need to focus on this. So there was such a like groundedness in everything that was shared in my time with you. And it was also like, so I had written the questions down and you were like, okay, well, they want to talk about question number 4. And I was like, okay, question number 4. And it happened to be about like, what do relationships look like for me? And you were like, well, start with the one with yourself. So I'm like, oh, okay. So it makes me, which is, I'm so appreciative to hear like really what I need to hear. But I can just imagine that you have probably in 20 years had times where maybe like you're getting the message of what they want you to answer the question and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to tell this person this.
Well, in the way that we teach the class, if you ask the records 3 times, if you're in a consulting role because you're not comfortable with saying it, can I say this differently? Can I say this differently? Oftentimes they'll give it to you a different way. But if they don't give it to you a different way, then that's just the way that you've got to say it. But we do have a leeway as a consultant. And when you're doing your own personal work, like level 1 is learning how to open your own Akashic records, the records will not go against free will. So even if the records are telling me something that the other person does not want to hear in any way, shape, or form, I'm not going to say it out loud, even if the records tell me.
And
because they're never going to go against free will. Yeah, they're never going to go against free will. Plus, then you can ask the records, is this for me to know or is this for me to share? Right? So there's a whole, we get information and then there's a lot of dialogue that can happen if you get into an uncomfortable situation. And even when you're going to learn level 1, so you're going to be doing your own work, you'll be able to like ask fold your arms and say, I don't want to know the answer to that question. And they'll stop or give me a little bit or, hello, can we go a little bit deeper, but not a lot deeper, right? There's this whole conversation where they want to co-create and be your friend, your partner, your sidekick. And so they're not going to go against your free will and they'll wait until you're open enough to drop that seed.
Which can be sensed. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had experiences like that where it was like the answer they were giving was not what the person wanted to hear and it was like...
I have had people get up and leave my sessions previously, and I'm asking the records for an example. There's also this place where people don't want to believe it, right? They just don't want to believe it. But I did have a session many, many, many years ago when I had somebody come and this is a sensitive subject, but they were of color. And they asked the records point blank, when will people stop being prejudiced against me? And the records were like, when you stop being prejudiced against them. That was really hard for me to deliver. Hard for me to deliver. And so he talked to me for about 5 more minutes. And then he said, okay, that's enough. I'm leaving. And he got up and he left. And about a year later, because he had actually recorded it, he emailed me and he said, I get it. But for that whole year, trying not to be attached to the outcome, knowing that I had come from the records and it was something that he needed. And I am so grateful that he taught me that lesson and that he was kind enough to get back to me and say, I get it, right? Because I'm still human.
Yeah.
Even if I know I'm coming from the records, I'm still human. And I don't like to see people uncomfortable or in discomfort.
I have so much respect for my experience with you because I could just tell that, there are so many different people that have gifts and it's, they're healers and they work in different capacities and people will come to them and maybe it's, oh, nothing but great things. It's all good. It's beautiful. Nothing but exciting things coming and, not really give them those hard truths because, in a sense, that could be bad for business.
It could be.
Yeah. But there's just the ethics in that. And not only the ethics, the integrity, and just it's being a healer. It's actually helping people.
So how the records would answer that? For one, I can't do it any other way. I personally, because there was so much deceit and cover up and secret in my early life that I just can't be any other way. And that's not a flavor everybody likes. I have a client back east that calls me "Tell it like it is, Wendy." Right? So so people just "Tell it like it is, Wendy." So she doesn't mind that. Not
I
everybody,
appreciate it.
not everybody likes that, but I personally can't do it any other way. And I would be cautious about saying that they may not be in their integrity about if they're only giving good news, because sometimes we go to people just to get a lift, or we go to people to get that information, or we go to people so that we can forget our shitty lives
Yeah.
for 5 minutes and have some hope.
Has
So-
anybody ever said that to you? Have they been like, good news only today?
No, because they won't come to me for that.
Disclaimer.
That's not how I operate.
Well, and what a beautiful way to put that is because different people are operating and channeling differently and channeling different information for a reason.
Yeah, and that's who you're attracted to.
Yeah.
That's who you're attracted to.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great way to think about that. And personally, I want to hear all sides and parts and pieces. And I think that's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Wendy, this has been a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for being here. How can people best, and of course, I'm going to have resources and everything linked in the description, but what is the best way to get in touch with you if people want to schedule a consulting session or?
I have tears in my eyes. I mean, I have like this really deep sense of satisfaction after this conversation. And so I just want to acknowledge that the way that I'm feeling inside. And I really appreciate all of you out there watching Taylor and this conversation and hearing and taking what you need and leaving the rest. They can reach me on my website, which is within-view.com or via email withinview@gmail.com.
So if someone wanted to schedule an appointment, that would be the best way.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be the best way.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And also I'm affiliate. Can I say this
Oh,
about my
please.
affiliation? You can also look on the website if you want to have classes, which I teach regularly, monthly. But you can learn it. You can learn akashicrecords.com, which is the website for Akashic Record Consultants International. So it's been my pure pleasure, and the records pure pleasure.
Thank you so
And
much.
If you don't mind, the records would like to have me
please.
close them while we're on this session so that the people can feel the difference in the energy of before and after.
Absolutely.
So we'll just take a breath. So they just want to say thank you. Thank you for being here on the planet. Thank you for being here in your body. Thank you for being who you are in this very moment. And understand that you're deeply loved. And with love and extreme gratitude, I now close the Akashic records that are open. Amen. Amen and amen. The records are now closed.
I would love to have you back.
I'd love to come back. Okay.
See you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. I would love to hear what your thoughts are in the comments. Be sure and hit like and then subscribe so that you don't miss an episode.